Kimberly, Mambo #5, Murgatroyd. Can you remember that song?
I can hear it in my head, but I can't sing it.
A little bit of
Mardi Gras in my life.
Mardi Gras.
What is it?
Monica.
Oh, Monica? I thought it said Mardi Gras.
You literally thought that song was a little bit of Mardi Gras in my life? A little bit of Mardi Gras by my side?
Who knows?
Oh my God, I don't even know who you are anymore.
Wait, you're a big fan of Mambo #5?
Yeah. You know who I saw
Who?
on TikTok? Remember Psy? PSY?
Oh, yeah.
I saw him on TikTok. This motherfucker.
Is he the one that was on the American Idol?
He's the Korean guy. Come on, Psy, the dance.
That didn't start on American Idol?
Oh my God, you're killing me today. Psy, his name is Psy. What is his song? Google Psy Korean. I have to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this podcast.
I know we're getting canceled. Gangnam Style.
Gangnam Style, Psy. Okay.
He started on American Idol.
No, he didn't.
He got a record deal?
Did he start like on Korean American Idol?
Hold on.
You're totally making up things now. A little bit of Mardi Gras by my side. What the fuck are you talking about? You remind me of my Uncle Johnny. Remember the song Two of Hearts? He thought it was two Pop-Tarts for years.
Oh my God.
Well, okay, so here's my point. What he has done, he has taken one song, okay? He was in a stadium in, I think, Korea, okay? The stadium must have had, no exaggeration, 70,000 people, okay? He is still doing Gangnam Style, okay?
Still, to this day.
They showed him he was underneath the stage, okay? And there's a guy underneath the stage with him, and then he just motions his hand up like that. The guy hits the button, and the stage is a spring, and it shoots him in the air, and he's 5 feet up in the air, and then he comes down in Gangnam Style. He's still rocking it. But that is not why we're here today. We're here to talk about how to move to Italy.
This is the most bizarre opening that we've ever done. If this is your first time listening to the podcast.
When I started talking about Gangnam Style, and then now you're going, I don't want to move to Italy, and I'm hitting stop. If you have no interest in either of these, you're not going to upset us. But here's what I know. I know since we've moved to Italy, we have gotten a bazillion direct messages asking us, okay, Smarty Pants, how the fuck do I do this? How do I move here?
Well, it's more than that, because now that you're TikTok famous, fun fact, I went ahead and pulled the trigger and made my profile private. And now people will stop Rob in the streets. And today we are sitting with our local team organizing our Italia event that is kicking off next week. And someone came over to Rob and was like, oh my God, I see you on the TikTok, blah, 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 blah. And the lady that I'm sitting with looks at me and she's like, what is happening? And I said, it is a new thing. He's newly TikTok famous. So she goes, are you jealous? I was like, no, the moment it happened, I went private. This is the best thing to happen to me, is that I get to be behind the scenes. Anyway, you putting out all of this content about living in Italy and the way you're doing it is so different and engaging that I'm pretty sure you're going to be written in for the Italian Minister of Tourism in the next election. With that, there has been an onslaught of, yeah, but how do you move to Italy? And how do you move to Italy? And how do you move to Italy? And I think these are kind of in two categories. I think some people are asking how, and they mean logistically. Is there a visa process? How do you get your shit there? All of that. And then I think the other how is more the bigger picture. How is this possible to uproot your life and shift countries? I think it's more of a psychological how, a vision how. And so what I think we should do is in this podcast, we'll talk about the logistical component.
I think it should be the other way around. And I'm sorry for doing this for you, but I'm thinking about how this is going to appear in our feed. And I think that the larger demographic of the audience would want to understand, how is it possible that I could figure out how to move out of my country into some other place? And then for those that have listened to that and are interested, then here's the logistics. But I think if you go the other way, it's not going to make sense.
Okay, fine. So then we'll do it the other way. So in part one, we'll talk about the vision of it, the actual, how is this even a possibility component? And then we'll do a part two next week, and it'll be the logistical, the breakdown, the visa for people that are truly interested. So if you haven't hit pause already and you're still listening, know that this vision component that we're going to talk about can apply to anything. It doesn't need to be moving to Italy to apply to. You can take the concepts and apply it to any sort of goal or big life change that you'd like to make.
All right. So where does one begin with this process? I would say the first thing is you've got to listen to what's going on in your head, what's going on in your soul, what you're feeling, and perhaps ignoring. Let me give you an example. When Kim and I traveled, no matter where we were, we always felt that something felt a little different for us than what we were familiar with in the US. There was, I don't know, maybe we go to South America and the lunches were a little bit longer. And then maybe we went to France and we saw that they really cared about how they dressed when they walked down the street. And so as we traveled around to different destinations, we started feeling a little differently than we did when we went back home. And so you go back home and you're like, they really dress well there in France, or they really seem to be eating a lot of butter and they're not having any issues with their diet with it. And they seem to be drinking wine every day. And so you can unsee these things that sort of start to feel different for you. So I think the first thing is to have the awareness that there's a pull in some way, that you feel attracted to something.
Okay, so we're going to use Italy as this lens, but again, insert whatever it is that you want. So for us, years ago, we sat down and we did this little exercise where we were going to write down, what do we want to have? What do we want to be? What do we want to do? And it was out of the Tim Ferriss Dreamline from the 4-Hour Workweek. And it was at night. Kids were in bed. We had a glass of wine. We had a little music playing and the stage was set. So the first thing was we were not in a stressed, anxious environment. It's not like we just conquered a problem or we were just triggered by something. So we opened a notebook. Like we were in a calm, relaxed, excited, high vibration state. And I think that's really important to have when you're doing this. And so we sat down and we each made a list. What do we want to have? What do we want to be? What do we want to do? We maybe wrote for, let's call it 30, 40 minutes. We were both done and we looked at each other's list and Rob said, I want to live in California, in Southern California. And mine said, I want to live in Italy. And so we laughed because how do you do that? And we decided in that moment that we were going to work towards doing 6 months in the US and 6 months in Italy. We had a daughter at the time that was getting older and would be off to college in a few years, and we didn't have the little one yet. Now, of course, we had the little one. It shifted that timeline because with schooling, it's a bit harder to do 6 months somewhere, 6 months somewhere else. So it shifted it, but that was the beginning stage of the vision we had to spend extended time in Italy at some point.
If you think about that, so now you've got the have, be, and do's with the Tim Ferriss Dreamline. And we had some friends here this week in Florence, and we were looking through some pictures. And we said, remember that vision board party that we did years ago? And we're like, hey, I remember it. And so we went through our photo album and we looked and we found pictures of what the vision board looked like. What was it, like 7 years ago?
It was a long time ago, maybe 10.
10. And what was on that vision board was very interesting. It was pictures of California, our vision board, and it was also pictures of Italy. And it literally said, we live in Italy, something like that. So this was in our head. I don't think we knew when it was going to happen. I don't think we knew exactly where we were going to live. I know for sure we didn't know anything about like visas or anything like that.
Yeah, we just thought we'd pack a bag.
We just thought, yeah, we just go to Italy and just get an Airbnb and stay there. Like there was no thought there. So I think what's important is to look at perhaps things through the years that you've talked about. Maybe you've had these conversations with your spouse where you're like, would you ever go to Italy, or would you ever go to China, or whatever's in there, and start thinking about these still quiet voices and also these big loud voices, and also start considering, like I mentioned earlier, when you are traveling around. And even if you haven't been to a location, maybe if you're watching a travel show, maybe just the idea that you're watching a travel show, there's something, a part of that where you feel, oh, this would be really interesting, right? So I think you have to pay attention to these low level things.
So you're waiting for the nudge, right? The nudge is in you, the nudge is there. And often we spend a lot of time ignoring the nudge, telling ourselves that's stupid. Like, I can't just pick up and move. I can't just leave my family. You have all these limitations that you argue for when you're not willing to hear the nudge and hear what's happening. I think the first thing is to really listen to that nudge. Now you have this nudge, right? And now you're tuning in to the voice inside. You're tuning in to the things you're saying, I wish, I dream, must be nice. Like all of those things. Every time, if you're one of those people on social media that comments on something must be nice, I want you to go and think about what triggered you in that video and what is it about that person's life that must be nice, number one. And number two, you can have that too. There's literally nothing preventing you from having it.
There's a reason why guys are the only ones that make fun of my hair. There's a reason for that. There's a reverse boomerang there that there's an insecurity, but there's something about the hair for them.
There's something about the hair because maybe they don't have any, or maybe they tried to grow it and do something, and maybe their mom put a bowl on their head and shaved it. Who knows?
Right.
But there's some sort of hair issue, and that makes them triggered to comment on your hair. So when you're posting about living in Italy and you get the must be nice type comment, yes, it is nice. It's actually really nice. But what is it about my story that's triggering you? That there's envy, there's a desire there. So instead of writing must be nice, why don't you do the work and figure out what that desire is that you have? And I'll tell you that a lot of this is getting past the limiting belief that you can make it happen. So some people I know are brand new to the podcast listening to this one. And I want to share a little bit about our story because people look at where we are right now, living in Italy and having this beautiful view of the terrace and all of this lifestyle that is just infusing us with love and joy and happiness. And there's the must be nicers, right? I don't know. What year are we in? 2023? 5 years ago, we were living and working in Atlanta, Georgia. We owned a physical business. We worked 12-hour days. And often we had great months where we made money and we had other months where we didn't get paid. We paid the whole staff, we paid the rent, and there was basically nothing left for us at the end. That was just 5 years ago. When people look and they go, you're so lucky, you must have had family money, you must have had an inn somewhere, you had all these people helping you. Nope. We built this. And we built this by starting with one thing, the vision for what we wanted. So when we sat down a decade ago, or however long it was, we did our first have, be, do, our life was very different. We were overworked, overwhelmed. Sometimes we were making money and sometimes we were hoping to God that money would come in. I joke about this, but do you remember the money dance?
Some of them were great.
3 p.m. is when the mailman arrived and the mailman would bring checks from vendors and whatnot. And so some days we would get a really big check and I would do the money dance. And other days we would not get anything and we would be trying to figure out what we were going to do. So for everyone that has said, oh, it must be nice, we built this bitch. And we created it starting with the vision of what we wanted. And we started with what do we want to have, be, and do. And so when you're in that place where you don't know how you're paying your rent next month, you don't know if your business is going up or down, you don't know what's happening, but you're sitting over here writing a have, be, do, saying, I want to live in Italy. That seems so foreign and overwhelming and like a pipe dream. But I'm sitting here today telling you, you can do it. And the first step is creating absolute clarity on what you want. What do you want?
Now you've got what do you want? You're super clear on that. And you're like, okay, this would be so much fun. And wait for it. Now comes the limiting beliefs. Okay. I can't do that. There's no way that I can pick up and move to Italy. I can't leave my family. My mom's here, my dad's here, my brothers and sisters are here. What am I going to do for work? I've got this job. It's a physical business. How do I do that? So you're going to have a list of all the reasons why you could argue for your limitations, all the reasons why you don't believe it's possible. And at the end of the day, you're going to be right. If you believe that you can't leave your family, you're right. You can't leave your family. If you believe that there's a possible way that you can mitigate leaving your family, perhaps your parents come visit a couple times a year, perhaps you go back and visit a couple times a year, perhaps you do a weekly Zoom with them. None of them is perfect, but change requires change, right? You got to do different things. So the next thing I would do is write down all the areas of why you don't believe it's possible. Once you've made a decision that you want to do this, go the other way and say, here's why it's not going to work. Okay. Another thing you do is something called the postmortem. And the postmortem is where you're looking at your goal and going, I did not move to Italy. I wanted to move to Italy, but it didn't happen. Now make a list of all the reasons why you believe it didn't happen. And you will come up with all of the reasons why you're probably right, why it didn't happen. Once you get that list of all the reasons to help you with prompts, where am I arguing for my limitations? Why do I believe it didn't work if it didn't work? What are the limiting beliefs I have about why it's not possible to do this? Get that list together. That's the monkey mind, right? That's your brain just trying to protect you, honestly. That's what the brain does. So once you get that list, then you look at it and say, okay, these are stories in my head about why it's not possible. They could be true stories if I allow them, or I can look at these stories and I can mitigate them. And so with each one of them, you look at them, and let's use the example of work, right? So I was a chiropractor, as Kim mentioned. I was working in the practice, and it's a physical business, right? I mean, I had people coming in and they had back pain. They lied on a table. I put my hands on them, did my magic, and that was the business. I can't do that from Italy, could I? No, I couldn't, but I could sell the practice. I could come up with a way that I can create a business online. Yeah, but I don't know what that business is. I could figure out some different ones. And so you start making a list of all of the possible things that you can do, and then you play a little game of stupid idea time. Okay, stupid idea time. What if we move to Italy and we've got all these reasons why it doesn't work? Let's play stupid idea time for each of these. Stupid idea time. What if we sold the chiropractic office to the chiropractor across the street? Nah, that's a stupid idea. I don't even think that guy likes me. You can't say it's a stupid idea. Write it down. Put it on the list. And you do that for every single limitation that you have.
So it's interesting because through this social media platform that is being built around Italy, that Rob is just, he's on fire with it. It's triggering a lot of people to come up with their limitations. And someone the other day, they were like, I'm too old, I'm too broke, but I'm so happy for you. And I was like, oh my God. Number one, I would put money on the fact that Rob is your age or older. Everyone says they're too old to Rob, and he's 57. And too old, too broke. Okay, you can't change your age, but you can change your mindset around your age. We learned the other day that Frances Mays didn't write Under the Tuscan Sun until she was 57. I think she's doing fine. She's 80 and she's happy and she's writing and she's living the life. She's not upset that she waited till 57. Too old, that is just stinking thinking. That's a limiting belief that your age has anything to do with it. The second thing, I'm too broke. Then fix it. I've had this conversation so many times in social media lately that it's something that is incredibly frustrating. People feel like their hands are tied. When you have an employee mindset, you feel like your hands are tied. Someone else is controlling your income. They're controlling your work hours. They're controlling the situation you work in. And you think that this is all that's possible. There are so many other ways to make money. If you have a skill set, you can have a side hustle on Upwork. I literally saw this side hustle. I would be the absolute worst person to do this in the universe. I'm going to blow your mind with this side hustle that's available on Upwork and Fiverr. Are you ready? It's someone that's willing to listen to you complain.
Fucking hire that person in a minute.
Right? Can you imagine me being that person on the other end?
But do they offer advice?
I don't think they do. I think it's called like lending an ear. You can literally get paid to lend an ear.
Let me ask you the reverse question. How much money would people have to pay you for you to listen to their...
It's not possible because I couldn't do it. Don't ever call me to complain. This is not who you call. There's other people for that. You can get them on Fiverr. You do not call me. But if that exists, anything exists. So what's your skill set? Are you a teacher? Do you teach a language? Are you a secretary? Are you an admin? Are you a HR? What is it that you are? Number one, you could build a business as a consultant or something around what you do for work and be your own boss. That's an option. Two, you could have a side hustle taking an aspect of something you do that you're great at and offer it up as a side hustle. There are ways to make money outside of getting a job. You can have a job and a side hustle, and many people do. But this idea that you're broke and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it is bullshit. If you want to change your life and if you want to stop saying must be nice, You have to take responsibility for your life and everything that's in it and everything that's not in it. Because what's not in your life, chances are, is because you're not putting it out there, doing the work to get it. That's some tough love.
It's true. Now, what I would do is once you've worked on this is what I want, you've worked on your limiting beliefs, Kim just smacked you around a little bit, and you're like, okay, all right, fuck, I'll do this thing. Tell me what to do. What I would do is I would get a whiteboard, big sketch pad the artists use, or piece of paper, whatever, just something where you have plenty of room to write. And just right at the top of it, move to Italy in 2 years, like whatever the goal is that you want. And then under it, I would write down every single thought, idea, question, action, research, anything that is in your mind, low-hanging fruit style. Just get it out of your head and just throw it onto a piece of paper. Once you get it on a piece of paper, you're going to be looking at all these disparate questions like, how do I get a visa? What about the community? I don't know anybody there. I don't speak the language. Do I need to know to speak the language? How do I speak all the questions that you would come up? How do I move? Literally, I'm sitting on the couch right now in my living room. What do I do with this couch that's under my butt? Like every question that you have, and you throw it onto a piece of paper. Once you got it there, you look at all these disparate pieces and you say, okay, let me group them together. This is all related to moving. This is all related to maybe a question an attorney can answer. This is all related to research, and you start chunking them into categories so you don't feel overwhelmed with 1,000 little pieces in your head. Once you get them all chunked into nice little neat packages, you start beginning to execute things. You don't quit your day job. You don't move to Italy tomorrow. You just start thinking about these things. The thing that is really the most confusing for me is I don't want to go through this process if I couldn't even get a visa. So I need to get these legal questions answered. So I'm going to spend this time this week really thinking about these legal questions. Kim and I are about to release a course. We'll put a link in the show notes for you if you are interested in moving to Italy. I'm going to buy a course. This course is going to help me understand the process of the visa. That's what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to get the course. I'm going to take the course. All these other questions about how to move my furniture is irrelevant if I couldn't even qualify for any visa to go there. So I'm going to focus on that. And I don't think you need to make this your be all end all, like I'm going to get all these questions answered this week and I'm going to move next week. I think this is something that's a slow boil in the back of your head that you're slowly making progress on. Once you do that, then I think you're going to start to get what Kim calls inspired actions. And these inspired actions are going to be this little hit that you get where you're feeling like, this week I need to do this. In my case, I love the Peloton, and it was one of these things that was driving me crazy. Like, how am I going to get this Peloton to Italy? I never did, and I've never been on a Peloton in the last 2 years, but it was a big deal for me at the time, and I needed to understand that, and I couldn't think beyond it until I understood that.
Okay, so now what do we have? We have the vision. What is it? You're listening to the nudge. We have the framework of the limiting beliefs, and sometimes just acknowledging the belief is there is enough to interrupt the pattern of having that belief, if not writing them down and mitigating them. And then you have the overwhelm of what everything looks like. But taking it back to the vision, going back to step one, what do you want? And gaining that crystal clarity on what you want. What Rob and I did is we went through multiple processes to decipher from the have, be, and do. What do we really want? Like, what do we want our life, our day to look like in Italy? Our everyday, not the exciting day where we're bike riding in the Tuscan countryside on a tour. But what do we want our day-to-day life to truly look like living in Italy? And so we got clear on what that looked like for us. And Rob, because he's such a great writer, wrote a vision for our life. And it was beautiful and it was captivating. It took him a while to write and tweak, and there's a process to it. But he wrote that vision. And then from that vision, we created a vision board, and we found actual photos of places in the neighborhood we wanted to live in. We found actual photos of restaurants that we wanted to go to. We made it real and realistic. And a lot of people make these vision boards. You can buy these kits on Amazon and you can go on Pinterest. It looks like Jeffrey Dahmer did it. It's cut out letters like you're sending a ransom note. Our first one, to be honest, that said, "We live in Italy." And that's okay. It's like an affirmation, but there's so many more powerful techniques to use. in when you're creating a vision board, and making it realistic for the lifestyle you want specifically is the most important. And then you have the written vision, right? So now you've heard it. You have the vision board, so you see it. What's left? You have to talk about it. And so Rob and I would sit at night with a glass of wine and we would talk about it. What do you think it'll be like to walk through the streets every day? Do you think that the school would be in walking distance? How do you think we'd get Sophia to school in the morning? What does that look like? And then that would trigger him to add something else to that overwhelm list. And we would research it. And what this does is this steps you into the actual planning of something that you don't even know the date for. Okay. So we're acknowledging that this is the woo-woo part. This is the manifesting part. You start talking this and speaking this into existence, and you will be shocked at how quickly your life changes to meet that conversation.
And then I think the last part before we wrap this up is all of what we described thus far is activating a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And that's the part of your brain, like when you buy a car and you see it everywhere. You're priming your brain to a new thing. The brain will find things that you're telling it to look for. Do you know what I mean? If you're somebody that loves clothes, when you go around walking around the streets of Florence, you're going to be noticing, I'm using myself here, you'll be noticing men's clothes in stores. But if you don't care about clothes, you're not even going to see it. If you care about food, you're going to be noticing all the restaurants when you walk around. So you want to prime your brain in that way. And you want to immerse yourself in a world that is on the same vibration of the world that you want to create for yourself. So what we would do is we would watch Stanley Tucci's series, Searching for Italy, because it was just putting ourselves in an environment of somebody that just loved Italy. And it reinforced in our brain the decision that we were making. We would search for Anthony Bourdain episodes and look for the Italian ones that he did. We would do the same for Phil Rosenthal and look for the ones he did on Florence. We go onto YouTube. There's a content creator that's fantastic. I actually interviewed her for my podcast, and her name's Kylie Flavel. And she just creates these Steven Spielberg, Tuscany mini movies. And we would sit there on Sundays and we would wake up in the morning and listen to Andrea Bocelli, and that would get us in the mood. We'd have some mimosas and we would put on these 40-minute episodes that she did of life living in Italy. And we would visualize and start having conversations, like Kim mentioned, about what it could be like living in Italy. And we're going to stop there because that's a lot of information for you. Go back, listen to this a few times, maybe with a pad, pencil, and get your significant other, if there's one, involved with you together to go through these exercises. There was a lot of stuff that we gave you today. Don't just listen to it and go, okay, got it. Actually do it. Do the work, write it down, evaluate your limiting beliefs. Decide what is the world that you want to get in. If you want to move to Japan, who's the influencer in Japan that you can watch every single day? What's the Japanese music you can listen to? What's a Japanese night that you can do in your house on Wednesdays that get the kids excited or the spouse excited about going there? What's the brand of sake that you could learn all about how this is created and why it's different than any other sake? Immerse yourself in the world.
And we have created a course. It's called the Ultimate Vision Course. And it was originally created for couples, but individuals can use it just as efficiently as a couple. And it walks you through all of the processes, getting super clear on what you want, putting together the written vision, the vision board, and also it gives you the strategies that we used in manifesting the vision that are real daily strategies. It's not some bullshit. It's like a checklist of things you do every day to speak this into existence and to make sure that this isn't some thing that you do once, falls behind a piece of furniture, and you never think about it again. So if you want that course, go into the show notes and you'll find a link, and you will also find a coupon for discount, but only for podcast listeners. So make sure you go in the show notes and grab that.
That's it this week. Bye-bye.